My name is Mason Davis, 32, working as a software engineer in Boston. Growing up, my sister Amber and I were close, despite the typical sibling rivalries that came with our 3-year age gap. So when I received what can only be described as a disinvitation to her wedding over something completely ridiculous, I was floored. Instead of fighting a losing battle, I booked my dream vacation to Hawaii for the exact same dates. Little did I know that while I was relaxing on the beach, my phone would suddenly explode with frantic messages from my entire family. Before I tell you how my peaceful getaway turned into family drama central, drop a comment where you're watching from and hit subscribe for more stories about standing your ground when others tried to push you around. Growing up in suburban Chicago, our middle-class family life seemed normal enough. My parents, Richard and Karen Davis, provided a comfortable home for Amber and me, with all the typical American childhood experiences, summer camps, backyard barbecues, and holiday traditions. As the older brother, I naturally took on a protective role when it came to Amber. 3 years younger than me, she was always the more outgoing and dramatic of us two. Our relationship had the usual sibling dynamics. I'd tease her, she'd run to our parents, I'd get in trouble. But beneath all that, we genuinely cared for each other. I still remember teaching her how to ride a bike when she was 6, holding the back of her seat and running alongside until she gained confidence. When neighborhood kids tried bullying her in elementary school, I was the one who stepped in, earning myself detention but ensuring they never bothered her again. If I'm being completely honest, though, there was always a subtle favoritism in our house. Amber, with her outgoing personality and ability to charm adults, often got special treatment. My straight A's would receive a nod of approval, while her B- in math warranted celebration dinners for trying so hard. It wasn't blatant enough to complain about, but it created an undercurrent of tension that would resurface throughout our lives. As teenagers, our paths diverged more noticeably. I gravitated toward computer science, spending hours coding and building early websites. Amber became intensely social, concerned with her appearance and popularity. She wasn't mean-spirited about it, she just existed in a different world than mine. While I was applying for engineering scholarships, she was being crowned homecoming queen. College marked another separation. I attended MIT on a partial scholarship, working part-time jobs to cover the rest. The workload was intense, but it paid off when I landed an internship at a promising tech startup during my junior year. Meanwhile, Amber attended a state university closer to home, changing majors 3 times before settling on communications. Our parents never seemed concerned about her academic indecision, while they'd call me weekly demanding updates on my grades and career prospects. After graduation, I secured a position at a tech company in Boston, working my way up from junior developer to senior software engineer over the course of 8 years. The distance from Chicago created a natural buffer between family dynamics, allowing me to establish my own identity away from the shadow of being the responsible one. I built a comfortable life, made good friends, and eventually met Sophia, a brilliant architectural designer who challenged and complimented me in ways I never expected. Amber's post-college journey was less straightforward. She moved back home after graduation, cycling through several entry-level jobs in marketing and public relations. Our parents never pushed her to become fully independent, always offering the safety net of her childhood bedroom. Eventually, she landed a position at a prestigious PR firm in Chicago, where her natural charm and social abilities served her well. It was at this firm that she met Trevor Blackwood 3 years ago. Coming from old money with family connections throughout Chicago's elite circles, Trevor represented everything Amber had always been drawn to: status, appearance, and social standing. From the first time she mentioned him during our monthly phone calls, I could hear the shift in her voice. Trevor wasn't just a boyfriend, he was a ticket to the lifestyle Amber had always envisioned for herself. When I finally met Trevor during a holiday visit home, my impressions were mixed. He was unfailingly polite, dressed impeccably, and knew exactly what compliments to pay our mother about her cooking. Yet something felt performative about his charm. The way he subtly corrected Amber's table manners or interrupted her stories to clarify details left me uneasy. When he asked about my little computer job, despite Amber having previously explained my role as a senior engineer managing a team of developers, I recognized the passive-aggressive dig for what it was. Over the next 2 years, I watched from a distance as Amber morphed to fit Trevor's world. Her carefully curated social media showed a transformation. Designer clothes replaced her formerly casual style, exclusive restaurants and clubs became her regular haunts, and her friend circle shifted entirely to Trevor's wealthy associates. When we spoke on the phone, our conversations became increasingly superficial. She was more interested in name-dropping celebrities she'd met through Trevor than asking about my life or reminiscing about our childhood. Despite these changes, I made consistent efforts to maintain our connection. I'd send her articles I thought would interest her, schedule video calls, and make sure to visit Chicago at least 3 times a year. During one such visit about a year ago, I attempted to have a heart-to-heart about Trevor, gently questioning if she was truly happy or just enamored with his lifestyle. Her defensive reaction told me everything I needed to know. She accused me of jealousy and always thinking I was better than everyone else. We didn't speak for nearly a month afterward. Small disagreements continued to create friction between us. When I couldn't attend a lavish birthday party she threw for Trevor because of an unmovable work deadline, she took it as a personal slight. When I suggested more affordable options for our parents' anniversary gift instead of the luxury cruise she proposed, knowing our dad hated boats, she accused me of being cheap despite my offering to pay the majority. Each interaction seemed to widen the gap between us, setting the stage for the wedding drama that would eventually unfold. The engagement announcement came via a professional photo shoot posted simultaneously across all social media platforms. Trevor had proposed at sunset on a private yacht in Lake Michigan, with a photographer and videographer capturing every moment. The diamond on Amber's finger looked large enough to have its own gravitational pull. In the accompanying phone call, she breathlessly detailed how Trevor's family had connections to Chicago's most exclusive wedding venue, and how they'd already secured a date just 8 months away. Despite my reservations about Trevor, I was genuinely happy that my sister was getting what she wanted. During our video call that evening, I smiled and asked all the right questions, listening to her excited chatter about dress designers and florists. Sophia sat beside me, squeezing my hand supportively when Amber mentioned Trevor's parents had, helpfully, suggested limiting +1s to only married couples, a policy that would exclude Sophia despite our 3 years together. As the weeks progressed, the wedding plans grew increasingly extravagant. The guest list ballooned to over 500 people, many of whom Amber barely knew, business associates of Trevor's father, distant relatives of his mother, and various Chicago socialites whose presence would ensure the wedding received coverage in local society pages. The venue was upgraded to an even more exclusive location requiring a minimum spend that made my eyes water when Amber accidentally let the figure slip. Trevor's parents, Gerald and Vivian Blackwood, quickly established themselves as the primary decision-makers. During one family dinner I attended while visiting Chicago, I watched uncomfortably as they dismissed Amber's preference for a specific caterer because it wasn't the one everyone uses for these sorts of affairs. Our parents sat silently, clearly intimidated by the Blackwoods' wealth and social standing. Amber, rather than standing her ground, quickly deferred to their judgment, shooting me a warning glance when I opened my mouth to support her original choice. My role in the wedding party was settled without much discussion. Trevor's brother Bradley would be best man, while I would be one of 6 groomsmen, alongside Trevor's college friends and cousins. I accepted this arrangement without complaint, though I couldn't help feeling a twinge of hurt that Amber hadn't pushed for me to have a more significant role. The first real conflict arose during a conversation about the wedding budget. Amber called me in tears one evening, confessing that costs were spiraling beyond what she and Trevor had initially planned. The Blackwoods were pushing for additions that would increase expenses by tens of thousands of dollars, with the expectation that Trevor and Amber would cover these extras. As someone who had always been financially responsible, I gently suggested scaling back certain elements or having a frank conversation with the Blackwoods about cost sharing. "You don't understand," Amber snapped, her tone shifting from vulnerable to defensive in an instant. This isn't some backyard barbecue, Mason. This is the social event of the season. Everyone who matters will be there. But if you can't afford it, I began. We can afford it, she interrupted. Trevor's getting a promotion soon, and anyway, it's an investment in our future. These connections matter. After that conversation, Amber became increasingly secretive about wedding details, especially anything related to costs. When our mother innocently mentioned to me that Amber and Trevor had taken out a substantial loan to cover wedding expenses, I made the mistake of expressing concern during our next sibling call. This led to an explosive argument where Amber accused me of trying to sabotage her happiness and embarrass her in front of Trevor's family. The situation with Sophia's invitation became another flashpoint. During a wedding planning weekend that I traveled to Chicago for, Amber casually showed me the seating chart for the reception. I noticed Sophia was placed at a table in the far corner with distant relatives and what Amber referred to as obligatory invites, people they felt required to include but didn't particularly want there. Sophia should be seated with me at the family table, I said, trying to keep my tone light despite my growing irritation. Amber exchanged a glance with Trevor, who had wandered over to join our conversation. Actually, she replied, the family table is only for immediate family and spouses. Since you guys aren't married, we've been together for 3 years, I countered. That's longer than you and Trevor. Trevor cleared his throat. It's just traditional etiquette, Mason. Nothing personal. But it felt extremely personal, especially when I learned that Bradley's girlfriend of 6 months would be at the family table because she was the daughter of a business associate of Trevor's father. When I pointed out this double standard, Amber's eyes filled with tears, and she accused me of trying to ruin her special day. These tensions came to a head at the engagement party hosted by the Blackwoods at their country club. The invitation had specified formal attire, with a color palette of navy, silver, and white to complement the photography aesthetic. I wore a charcoal suit with a burgundy tie, not deliberately flouting the color scheme but simply not giving it much thought. Sophia wore a beautiful emerald green dress that, while elegant and appropriate for the venue, similarly fell outside the prescribed palette. The moment we walked in, I could feel Amber's disapproval radiating across the room. She greeted Sophia coolly and pulled me aside under the pretense of showing me something. I specifically said navy, silver, or white. She hissed once we were out of earshot. Now all the photos will be ruined. Amber, no one cares what color tie I'm wearing, I replied, genuinely baffled by her reaction. I care. The Blackwoods care. Do you have any idea how important this party is? The evening deteriorated from there. During dinner, Trevor's mother made a pointed comment about some people not understanding the importance of presentation. Later, when gifts were opened, my carefully selected first edition book of poetry, Amber had majored in literature before switching to communications, was set aside with barely a glance, while the crystal decanter from Trevor's college roommate received effusive praise. The following day, the text messages began. Amber sent a paragraph-long critique of my casual disregard for her wishes, followed by complaints about the gift being too personal for a public opening and not in keeping with their registry. I responded that I thought a meaningful gift would be appreciated alongside the household items, which escalated into a heated exchange where years of sibling tension bubbled to the surface. 3 days later, I received an email from Amber's wedding account. The subject line read, "Wedding party update," but the content was effectively a disinvitation. Dear Mason, after careful consideration regarding the dynamics of our special day, Trevor and I have decided to restructure our wedding party and guest arrangements. Your recent behavior has demonstrated a fundamental lack of understanding regarding the significance of our celebration and the standards we have established. We feel it would be best if you took this time to reflect on your priorities. We will connect after the honeymoon to discuss moving forward as family. Sincerely, Amber and Trevor. I read the email 3 times, unable to believe my sister would actually ban me from her wedding over a tie color, and a thoughtful gift. When I called her for clarification, she didn't answer. My texts went unread. When I finally reached our mother, her response was equally shocking. "Honey, you know how important this wedding is to Amber," she said, her voice placating. "Maybe you could just apologize and promise to follow all the guidelines. Get a navy tie, return the book, and buy something from the registry. It's just one day, after all." The realization that my entire family expected me to grovel for the privilege of attending my own sister's wedding over such petty grievances left me stunned and deeply hurt. It was the culmination of a lifetime of double standards, and for the first time, I wasn't willing to be the bigger person just to keep the peace. The night after receiving Amber's disinvitation email, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop screen, a tumbler of whiskey untouched beside me. I drafted and deleted a dozen response emails, ranging from scathing to pleading. Nothing felt right. Sophia sat beside me on the couch, her hand gently rubbing my back as I processed the hurt and disbelief. "I just don't understand how we got here," I said, closing my laptop. "Over a tie and a book? Really?" "It's not about the tie or the book," Sophia replied softly. "It's about control. Amber and the Blackwoods want complete control over every aspect of this wedding, including how everyone behaves and appears in it." She was right, of course. This wasn't really about wedding aesthetics. It was about my sister becoming someone I barely recognized, someone who valued appearance over actual relationships. The next morning, I called my parents again, hoping for support or at least understanding. Instead, my father sighed heavily into the phone. "Mason, you know how Amber gets. Just apologize even if you don't mean it. Wear whatever monkey suit they want you to wear. It's easier than fighting about it." "Dad, she uninvited me to her wedding," I emphasized. "Her own brother. Over a tie color. Don't you think that's completely unreasonable?" "Of course it's unreasonable," he admitted. "But that's how these things go. Big weddings, lots of stress. Your mother and I just want everyone to get along." "By everyone getting along, you mean me giving in?" Again. The conversation ended with my father's familiar refrain. "Just be the bigger person, son." Later that day, my friend Ryan called to check in. I texted him about the situation, and his outrage on my behalf was refreshing after my family's dismissive attitude. "So let me get this straight," Ryan said after I recounted the full story. "You're banned from the wedding because you wore a burgundy tie instead of navy? That's insane, bro. Apparently I'm not understanding the significance of their special day." I quoted bitterly. "You know what? If they don't want you at the wedding, do something awesome that weekend instead. When is this Bridezilla extravaganza anyway?" "June 17th through the 19th. The actual ceremony is on the 18th, but there's events the whole weekend." I could practically hear Ryan's smile through the phone. "Perfect. That's prime vacation season. Take a trip somewhere amazing. Hawaii, Mexico, Caribbean, somewhere with beaches and cocktails and zero family drama." The idea took root immediately. If I wasn't welcome at the wedding, why should I sit at home feeling sorry for myself? I deserve better than that. That evening, I found myself browsing resort options in Hawaii. The Koa Reef Resort on Maui's west coast caught my eye. Luxury beachfront accommodations, multiple pools, on-site spa, and several excursion options for exploring the island. By remarkable coincidence, or perhaps fate, they had a cancellation for a premium ocean view suite for exactly June 16th through the 22nd. My cursor hovered over the "book now" button as conflicting emotions swirled. Part of me still hoped for reconciliation, for Amber to come to her senses and realize how petty this all was. But another part, the part tired of always accommodating unreasonable demands, was ready to prioritize my own happiness for once. "You should do it," Sophia said, looking over my shoulder at the stunning resort photos. "It looks amazing. You don't think it's petty? Booking a luxury vacation while my sister gets married? No pettier than being disinvited from a wedding over a tie color," she pointed out. "Besides, it's not like you're posting having a great time not at your wedding on social media. You're just making the best of a hurtful situation. With a deep breath and a strange sense of both guilt and liberation, I clicked book now. As the confirmation email arrived in my inbox, I felt an unexpected weight lift from my shoulders. For perhaps the first time in my life, I was choosing my own well-being over family expectations. Sophia tried to arrange time off to join me but couldn't manage it with a major project deadline coinciding with the trip. You should still go, she insisted. Take some time for yourself. God knows you've earned it after dealing with all this drama. Telling my family about the vacation was the next hurdle. I decided to be straightforward, calling my mother first. Hawaii? She repeated, her voice rising an octave. But what if Amber changes her mind about the wedding? Then she can call and tell me directly. I replied firmly. But I'm not sitting by the phone waiting for an invitation that was rescinded over something ridiculous. This will break her heart, Mason. She'll see it as you choosing a vacation over her wedding. Mom, she literally uninvited me. She made the choice, not me. My mother's disapproval was palpable, but I stood firm. Similar conversations with my father and a few extended family members followed the same pattern: initial shock, attempts to make me feel guilty, and finally reluctant acceptance when they realized I wouldn't be swayed. Amber herself didn't contact me directly, but I heard through my cousin Jennifer that she was deeply hurt by my vindictive vacation planning. The irony of her feeling hurt after explicitly uninviting me was not lost on anyone except, apparently, my immediate family. The weeks leading up to the trip were filled with last-minute attempts at intervention. My mother called daily with updates on Amber's wedding preparations, transparently trying to make me feel excluded and regretful. My father took a more direct approach, offering to pay any cancellation fees for the resort if I would just apologize to your sister and be done with it. The final attempt came 3 days before my scheduled departure, when my mother showed up unannounced at my apartment in Boston, having flown in specifically to convince me to change my mind. Mason, please, she pleaded, sitting at my kitchen table clutching a cup of tea. Just wear the navy tie. Just return the book and buy something from the registry. It's such a small thing to keep peace in the family. It's not small to me, Mom, I replied, keeping my voice gentle but firm. This is about respect. I'm not going to beg for an invitation to my own sister's wedding when I did nothing wrong. But Hawaii? During her wedding? It seems so deliberate. It is deliberate. I'm deliberately choosing not to sit at home feeling bad about myself because Amber and the Blackwoods think I'm not good enough for their perfect wedding photos. I deserve better than that. My mother left without the capitulation she'd hoped for. As I packed my suitcase the night before my flight, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: lingering hurt, certainty I was making the right choice for myself, and a small, persistent sadness that things had deteriorated to this point. Still, as I folded my swimming trunks and casual shirts, not a tie among them, I felt something else growing stronger, a sense of self-respect and boundary setting that had been missing from my family relationships for far too long. The moment I stepped off the plane in Maui, the warm tropical air enveloped me like a welcome embrace. After the tension-filled weeks leading up to my departure, the island atmosphere immediately began working its magic. The shuttle ride to Koa Reef Resort offered breathtaking views of the coastline, lush mountains, an endless blue sky that made Boston's urban landscape seem like a distant memory. Check-in at the resort exceeded my expectations. My ocean view suite featured a spacious lanai overlooking the Pacific, a king-sized bed draped in high thread-count linens, and a bathroom with both a rainfall shower and a soaking tub. The welcome basket contained local fruits, chocolate-covered macadamia nuts, and a bottle of champagne, ironically perfect for a non-wedding celebration. That first evening, I sat on my lanai watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink while sipping a glass of champagne. For the first time in months, the knot of tension between my shoulders began to loosen. I took a photo of the sunset view but resisted the urge to post it on social media. This trip wasn't about making a statement. It was about reclaiming my peace of mind. Day 1 of my Hawaiian getaway was dedicated to pure relaxation. I woke early, still on East Coast time, and watched the sunrise from my lanai before heading to the beach. The resort's private stretch of coastline was already set up with comfortable loungers and umbrellas, though few guests were out so early. I claimed a spot near the water, alternating between swimming in the warm ocean and reading the mystery novel I'd brought along. Around midday, I treated myself to lunch at the beachside restaurant, fresh poke bowl with local fish, avocado, and mango. The server, a friendly local named Kai, suggested activities for my stay. "First time on Maui?" he asked while refilling my water. "First time in Hawaii altogether," I admitted. "Perfect time to visit. June's great, busy season hasn't fully hit yet." He proceeded to recommend his favorite hiking trails, snorkeling spots, and local restaurants away from the tourist traps. I took his advice and booked a snorkeling excursion for the following day, along with a sunrise volcano tour for later in the week. The resort's concierge also helped me reserve a table at a traditional Hawaiian luau for that evening. The luau proved to be exactly the cultural immersion I needed: mesmerizing fire dancers, traditional music, and a feast of kalua pork, lomi salmon, and poi. I found myself seated at a table with 2 retired couples from California and a solo traveler named Mark from Seattle. The conversation flowed easily, centered around travel experiences and island recommendations rather than the personal drama I'd left behind in Boston. By the time I returned to my suite, pleasantly full and slightly tipsy from my ties, I realized I hadn't checked my phone all evening. There were several texts from Sophia asking how the trip was going, which I answered with a photo of the luau and a brief update. Notably absent were any messages from my family, despite them knowing I'd arrived safely in Hawaii. Day 2 brought the snorkeling excursion at Malakini Crater, a partially submerged volcanic caldera teeming with colorful fish and coral formations. The 3-hour boat trip included encounters with sea turtles, a pod of spinner dolphins, and even a distant whale sighting that the captain assured us was unusual for June. Floating in the clear blue water, watching tropical fish dart around me, the wedding drama felt literally and figuratively distant. That evening, I enjoyed a quiet dinner at the resort's upscale restaurant, treating myself to locally caught mahi-mahi and a glass of Chardonnay. I sent Sophia a few more photos and we chatted briefly by text, with her reporting that nothing much was happening in Boston except rain. Once again, no communication from my family, which I tried to view as a blessing rather than another slight. The morning of Day 3, June 18th, dawned bright and beautiful. Wedding day. I had deliberately planned a jam-packed schedule to keep my mind occupied: morning yoga on the beach, followed by a hiking excursion to a local waterfall, and an afternoon outrigger canoe lesson. I left my phone in the hotel room safe, determined not to spend the day checking for messages that wouldn't come or scrolling through social media for glimpses of the ceremony I'd been deemed unworthy to attend. The strategy worked beautifully until late afternoon. Exhausted but content after my active day, I returned to my suite, showered off the salt and sand, and ordered room service. With a plate of fresh seafood pasta and another glass of wine, I settled onto my lanai to watch the sunset. Almost as an afterthought, I retrieved my phone from the safe to capture the spectacular view. The screen lit up with a barrage of notifications that made my heart skip: 27 missed calls, 43 text messages, and numerous social media alerts. For a moment, I feared something had happened to Sophia or another close friend. Why else would my phone be blowing up like this? But as I scanned the notifications, I realized they were all from family members, including multiple calls and texts from Amber herself. The first message I opened was from my mother, timestamped just after noon Eastern Time. Emergency. Call immediately. Wedding disaster. My cousin Jennifer had texted, "OMG Mason, you won't believe what happened at the church. Call me." Even my normally stoic father had left 4 voicemails, the first simply stating, "Son, we need you to call home right away." Most surprising were the messages from Amber, ranging from angry, "This is all your fault somehow," to pleading, "Please Mason, I need you to call me back." to what appeared to be drunk texting by evening. I should have listened to you about him. With my heart pounding, I called my parents' number first, half expecting to be sent to voicemail given the time difference. Instead, my mother answered on the first ring, as though she'd been sitting with the phone in her hand. "Mason! Finally! Where have you been all day?" Her voice was strained, hovering between anger and tears. "I was hiking and kayaking, Mom. What's going on? Is everyone okay?" A deep breath on the other end. "No, everyone is not okay. The wedding, there is no wedding. Trevor called it off. At the church. In front of everyone." The pasta on my plate forgotten, I listened as my mother unraveled the story, occasionally interrupted by my father adding details in the background. Apparently, everything had proceeded normally through the morning: bridal party preparations, photographs, guests arriving at the church. Then, just minutes before the ceremony was to begin, Trevor had asked to speak with Amber privately in a side room of the church. 10 minutes later, guests heard shouting. Trevor emerged first, ashen-faced, followed by a hysterical Amber whose makeup was streaked with tears. According to my mother, Trevor announced to his parents, but audible to many guests, that he couldn't go through with it, and that he'd been having doubts for months. He apologized for the unfortunate timing, but said it would be a bigger mistake to proceed with something this permanent when he wasn't certain. What followed was apparently case. Amber had collapsed into our mother's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Trevor's father had dragged him outside for what witnesses described as a ferocious dressing down. Guests milled around in confusion until Trevor's mother, maintaining remarkable composure, announced that the ceremony would not be taking place and directed everyone to the church exits. "Your sister is devastated," my mother continued. "She hasn't stopped crying since it happened. We had to sedate her to get her to sleep." "What about all the reception arrangements? The venue, the catering, everything?" I asked, practical concerns surfacing even amid the shock. "That's part of why we've been trying to reach you all day," my father interjected, apparently having taken the phone. "It's a complete financial disaster on top of everything else. Non-refundable deposits everywhere. The Blackwoods are being difficult about sharing the losses." "Difficult how?" "They're claiming since it was their son who called it off, Amber must have done something to push him away. They're talking about personality incompatibility and other nonsense. Meanwhile, we're stuck with bills for a wedding that didn't happen." As the conversation continued, the implicit message became clear: they needed my help. Not just emotional support for Amber, but practical assistance dealing with vendors, possibly legal advice about contracts, and likely financial support as well. "Mason, you need to come home," my mother said back on the phone. "Your sister needs you. We all do." A familiar sensation washed over me, the weight of family expectation, the assumption that I would drop everything to solve a crisis I had neither created nor been consulted about. But this time, the tropical breeze on my skin and the distance I'd established allowed me to see the situation with unprecedented clarity. "Mom, I'm in Hawaii. I can't just snap my fingers and appear in Chicago. There are flights every day," she countered. "We'll pay for your ticket home. That's not the point. I was deliberately excluded from this wedding. Now that it's imploded, I'm suddenly needed? This isn't the time for grudges, Mason. Your sister is heartbroken." I took a deep breath, watching the sun begin its final descent toward the horizon. I'm not holding a grudge. But I'm also not abandoning the vacation I planned because Amber and Trevor's relationship fell apart. I can help remotely, calls to vendors, reviewing contracts, whatever you need. But I'm staying in Hawaii. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Finally, my father's voice. "Son, sometimes being family means showing up, even when it's inconvenient." "I agree, Dad. But it also means respecting boundaries. I'll call Amber in a little while and see how I can help from here." After ending the call with my parents, I sat watching the sunset, my mind racing. Within minutes, my phone rang again. Amber herself. "Stealing myself," I answered. Her voice was barely recognizable, hoarse from crying. Mason? Are you really in Hawaii right now? Yes, Amber, I am. I'm so sorry about what happened. Do you want to talk about it? What followed was 20 minutes of tearful recrimination, how I should have been there, how I could have talked sense into Trevor beforehand, how my absence had somehow contributed to the disaster. As her emotional tirade wound down, she finally asked the question that revealed her true perspective. How could you be so selfish? Going on vacation instead of being at my wedding? Despite the sympathy I felt for her situation, this accusation rekindled my resolve. Amber, you uninvited me, remember? Over a tie color and a gift you didn't like. You made it very clear I wasn't welcome. A pause, then a whispered, I didn't think you'd actually not come. The realization struck me, she had expected me to grovel, to beg for reinstatement to her wedding. My booking a vacation instead of playing my assigned role in the family drama had genuinely shocked her. I'm sorry you're hurting, I said, keeping my voice gentle but firm. And I want to help however I can from here. But I'm not cutting my trip short. More tears, more accusations, before she finally hung up with a bitter, enjoy your Mai Tais while my life falls apart. As I sat processing this conversation, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Mason, this is Trevor. I know this is inappropriate, but I need to explain what happened. Can we talk? I stared at the message in disbelief. The man who had just left my sister at the altar wanted to explain himself to me? The audacity was almost impressive. I set the phone down without responding, needing time to think. By this point, the sun had set completely, leaving the lanai illuminated only by the soft glow from my suite and the distant tiki torches around the resort pool. My dinner sat cold and forgotten as I contemplated how quickly paradise had become entangled with the chaos I'd tried to escape. After a restless night punctuated by more family calls and texts, which I silenced after midnight, I woke early the next morning with a clear head and a strategic plan. If I was going to help my family through this crisis while maintaining my boundaries, I needed to be organized, practical, and emotionally detached, skills I regularly employed in my professional life but rarely applied to family dynamics. Over room service breakfast on my lanai, I created a shared document titled Wedding Aftermath Action Plan, setting up sections for vendor communications, financial considerations, guest follow-up, and emotional support resources. I then sent a group email to my parents and Amber explaining my approach. I understand you're all disappointed that I'm not flying back immediately, but I can actually be more effective helping remotely without being caught up in the emotional chaos. I've created this shared document to coordinate our efforts. Mom and Dad, please forward me all vendor contracts and contact information. Amber, when you feel up to it, I'd appreciate a list of which guests you've already heard from and who still needs to be contacted. I'll set up a video call for 2 p.m. Hawaii time, 7 p.m. Chicago, to discuss next steps. The response was mixed. My father, always practical, promptly forwarded the vendor information. My mother sent a terse, "Fine." Amber didn't respond at all, though I could see she'd opened the document. I spent the morning methodically contacting vendors, leveraging both my negotiation skills and the natural sympathy people feel for a cancelled wedding. With the florist, I arranged for the already prepared arrangements to be delivered to a local hospital instead of going to waste, which created enough goodwill that they agreed to refund 30% of the deposit. The photographer consented to apply their fee toward a future family photo shoot. The band was the most difficult, refusing any concessions until I mentioned the potential PR value of showing compassion versus the negative reviews that might follow in flexibility. By noon, I'd secured partial refunds or credits from nearly half the vendors, documenting each conversation in the shared spreadsheet. I could see my father adding notes occasionally, and even Amber had begun filling in the guest communication section. At 2 p.m., I set up the video call from my suite's desk, positioning my laptop so the ocean view wasn't visible in the background. No need to rub in my location. My parents appeared on screen first, looking exhausted. Amber joined a few minutes late, her face puffy from crying, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, a stark contrast to the perfectly coiffed bride she'd expected to be by this point. "Okay," I began, keeping my tone businesslike. "I've made progress with several vendors. Dad, I saw your notes about the venue." "Did you manage to reach the manager directly?" The call proceeded surprisingly well, focusing on practical matters rather than emotional recriminations. We developed a systematic approach to mitigating financial losses and communicating with guests. Only toward the end did Amber's composure crack. "I still don't understand why," she said suddenly, interrupting our discussion of whether to return wedding gifts. "Why would he wait until literally minutes before the ceremony? Who does that?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the call. My parents exchanged glances, clearly having heard this question repeatedly over the past 24 hours. "Have you actually talked to Trevor since it happened?" I asked gently. "No." Amber's voice rose. "And I never want to again. He humiliated me in front of everyone we know." I nodded, choosing my words carefully. "That's completely understandable. The timing was inexcusable, regardless of his reasons. But at some point, for your own closure, you might want to hear his explanation." "There's no explanation that could possibly make this okay," she snapped. "I agree. But understanding why might help you move forward eventually." Amber's eyes narrowed. "Did he contact you?" "He did, didn't he?" I hesitated just long enough for her to know the answer. Unbelievable. My own brother talking to the man who just destroyed my life. "If you were here, this never would have happened. But you had to be selfish and go to Hawaii instead." With that, she disconnected from the call, leaving our parents and me in awkward silence. "You've been in contact with Trevor?" my father asked, his tone careful. "He texted me once." "I haven't responded," I clarified. "And Amber's wrong. My presence wouldn't have changed anything except adding another witness to the disaster." After finishing the call with a few more logistical discussions, I decided to clear my head with a walk on the beach. The contrast between the crisis unfolding in Chicago and the paradise surrounding me couldn't have been more stark. As I walked along the shoreline, letting the warm water wash over my feet, I noticed an older woman sketching on a small pad beneath a palm tree. Something about her serene expression made me pause. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" she remarked, looking up from her drawing, a surprisingly skilled rendering of the coastline. "It is," I agreed. "Though I'm having trouble enjoying it fully at the moment." She smiled knowingly. "Family troubles have a way of following us, even to paradise." Surprised by her perception, I introduced myself and learned her name was Diane, a retired psychologist from Oregon on her annual solo trip to Hawaii. Something about her calm demeanor and the fact that she was a complete stranger made it easy to share my situation as we walked along the beach. "So now I'm caught between maintaining my boundaries and helping my family through a crisis," I concluded. Diane considered this thoughtfully. "You know, in my practice, I often saw families with entrenched dynamics, roles that everyone was expected to play without question. The responsible one, the dramatic one, the peacemaker. Breaking those patterns always causes resistance, even when it's healthy." "That's exactly it," I said, relieved at being understood. "I've always been the fixer, the reasonable one who sets aside his own feelings to solve everyone else's problems. And now you're refusing that role, which is threatening the entire family system." She nodded. "It doesn't mean you don't love them or won't help them. It just means you're changing the terms of that help." Our conversation continued through sunset, with Diane offering insights from both her professional background and personal experience with her own family. By the time we parted ways, exchanging contact information with promises to meet for coffee before the end of our stays, I felt centered and confident in my approach. Back in my suite, I found multiple missed calls from both Amber and, surprisingly, Trevor. Before I could decide which to address first, my phone rang again. "Sophia." "Hey you," I answered, grateful for her familiar voice. "How's Boston?" "Less dramatic than your vacation, apparently," she replied. "Your mom called me." I groaned. "Of course she did. Let me guess, She wanted you to convince me to come home? Basically. I told her you were an adult making your own decisions and that if Amber hadn't uninvited you in the first place, you'd have been there when everything went sideways. Thank you for having my back, I said, smiling despite the situation. It's been a day of remote crisis management. Sophia listened as I detailed the vendor negotiations and family video call. You're doing everything you reasonably can, she assured me. Honestly, you're probably more effective from a distance, less caught up in the emotional tornado. That's what I told them, but it's not what they want to hear. Because what they actually want isn't your practical help. They want you to fall back into your usual role of emotional support and validation. They want you to absorb everyone's feelings and make it better. Her insight, so similar to Diane's, strengthened my resolve. After we hung up, I decided to address the situation head-on. I called Amber first, surprised when she actually answered. I thought you'd be too busy enjoying your vacation to call back, she said, her voice bitter but no longer hysterical. Amber, I know you're hurting, and I know you want me there physically. But I'm actually doing more concrete good from here, without being caught in the emotional crossfire. It's not the same. No, it's not. But it's what I can offer right now. I've already saved the family thousands of dollars in vendor negotiations today. Tomorrow I'll work on the guest gift situation. A long pause, then a shaky sigh. Trevor keeps trying to contact me. Do you want to know what he has to say? No. Yes. I don't know. Another pause. Did you respond to him? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. This seemed to surprise her. Really? Of course. Whatever happened between you two, you're still my sister. I'm on your side, even if I'm showing it differently than you'd prefer. Our conversation lasted nearly an hour, more honest than we'd been with each other in years. While she still expressed hurt over my absence, she seemed to finally understand that I was still supporting her, just on different terms than before. That night, I made the controversial decision to respond to Trevor's text with a brief message. I can't and won't speak for Amber, but I'm willing to hear your side. However, understand that my primary concern is supporting my sister through the devastation you've caused, regardless of your reasons. His response came quickly. I understand. Thank you for even responding. Can we talk tomorrow? The next morning, after another round of productive vendor calls, I took Trevor's call from the privacy of my lanai, curious despite my lingering anger toward him. Mason, thank you for talking to me, he began, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I know how this looks. I know everyone thinks I'm a complete villain. You left my sister at the altar in front of hundreds of people, I replied flatly. What exactly did you expect? What followed was a surprisingly vulnerable account of mounting pressure, second thoughts, and family manipulation, not just his emerging doubts about compatibility with Amber, but the suffocating expectations from his parents about the marriage, the social connections it would secure, and the business advantages it would bring. He described feeling trapped in a performance of the perfect couple, with the wedding becoming an extravagant show rather than a celebration of love. I kept thinking the doubts would go away, he explained. That once we got through the wedding, things would calm down and we could figure out who we really were as a couple, away from all the external pressure. But standing there in that church, about to make vows I wasn't sure I could keep. I couldn't do it. The timing was still inexcusable, I noted, though my anger had diminished slightly. I know. I've replayed it 1,000 times, thinking of better ways I could have handled it. I should have addressed my concerns months ago, before everything escalated. The truth is, I was a coward until the very last minute, and then I overcorrected in the worst possible way. By the end of our conversation, I didn't excuse Trevor's actions, but I understood them better. I also recognized uncomfortable parallels between his situation and my own, both of us breaking free from expected roles, though with dramatically different approaches and consequences. That evening, I organized another family video call, this time including Amber's best friend Rachel at my request, as she had been providing in-person support in Chicago. With everyone on screen, I presented a comprehensive update on financial recovery efforts, guest communications, and next steps. Then, taking a deep breath, I addressed the elephant in the room. I've spoken with Trevor. The expected outcry followed, particularly from Amber, but I raised my hand to continue. I didn't do it behind your back, I'm telling you now, transparently. I don't excuse what he did or how he did it. But I do think understanding his perspective might eventually help with closure. I don't want closure. I want justice, Amber cried. I understand that feeling, I replied calmly. But at some point, closure will be more valuable for your healing than justice or vindication. The conversation that followed was difficult but necessary. For perhaps the first time, I spoke to my family not as the accommodating fixer but as an adult with my own perspective and boundaries. I outlined clearly what I was willing to do to help: continue vendor negotiations, manage guest communications, provide financial support for unrecoverable costs, and what I wasn't: cut my vacation short, absorb everyone's emotional reactions, or pretend Trevor's perspective didn't exist. This isn't how we handle things in this family, my mother objected at one point. Maybe that's part of the problem, I countered gently. Maybe some of our patterns need to change. By the end of the call, a new, tentative understanding had been established. My parents seemed resigned, if not entirely supportive of my approach. Amber, while still hurt, had moved from accusation to reluctant acceptance. And I had maintained my boundaries while still providing genuine support, a balance I'd never quite achieved before in my family relationships. The remainder of my Hawaiian vacation unfolded with an unexpected rhythm: mornings spent in paradise, hiking volcanic trails, learning to surf, exploring local markets, and afternoons dedicated to managing the wedding aftermath remotely. It wasn't the purely relaxing getaway I'd originally planned, but there was something deeply satisfying about balancing self-care with family support on my own terms. My negotiations with vendors continued to yield results. By combining compassionate appeals with gentle reminders about potential social media and review implications, I secured either partial refunds or future credits from nearly 70% of the contracted services. The venue proved most challenging until I discovered their marketing director had experienced a similar wedding cancellation in her own family. The personal connection led to an unexpected offer to host a scaled-down family reunion event in the future at half price. Amber gradually shifted from blaming me for not being physically present to appreciating my effective advocacy. Our daily check-in calls became less emotionally charged and more collaborative. 6 days after the wedding she sent a text that marked a turning point. I still wish you were here, but I probably would have just cried on your shoulder instead of dealing with things. Maybe your way is working better. Trevor made one more attempt to communicate with Amber through me, sending a formal letter of apology that acknowledged the pain he'd caused without making excuses. After consulting with Sophia and Diane, who had become a valuable mentor during our continued beach walks, I decided to tell Amber about the letter but let her choose whether to read it. She initially refused but asked me to keep it for someday, maybe, when it doesn't hurt so much. On my final evening in Hawaii, I received surprising news from my father. The Blackwoods had reversed their position and agreed to cover 60% of the non-refundable wedding costs. Apparently, Trevor had convinced his parents that taking financial responsibility was the right thing to do, regardless of who they blamed for the relationship's failure. I think your conversation with him might have influenced this, my father admitted grudgingly. Whatever you said seems to have gotten through. My flight back to Boston included a layover in Chicago, creating an opportunity for a brief family reunion at the airport. Despite my apprehension, I agreed to the meeting, curious to see how our dynamic would feel in person after everything that had transpired. Sophia met me at Boston's Logan Airport, enveloping me in a tight hug before I could even set down my carry-on. I miss you, she murmured into my shoulder. And I'm so proud of how you handled everything. It wasn't exactly the relaxing vacation I planned, I replied with a wry smile. No, but maybe it was the vacation you needed, not just from work, but from your usual family role. Back at our apartment, After sharing Hawaiian chocolates and catching up on Boston happenings, Sophia brought up something unexpected. "Your mom called again yesterday," I groaned. "Please tell me she wasn't still trying to make me feel guilty." "Actually, no. She wanted my advice on how to support Amber without, in her words, enabling the drama. I think your different approach made her reflect on some things." This surprising development proved to be just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, subtle but significant shifts occurred in my family dynamics. My parents began consulting me about Amber rather than simply expecting me to fix situations. Amber herself started therapy, something she'd always dismissed previously as for people who can't handle their own problems. 3 weeks after the cancelled wedding, Amber asked to meet for coffee during my weekend visit to Chicago. She looked different. Her previously highlighted hair returned to its natural brown, her carefully manicured nails short and unpolished, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. "I owe you an apology," she said after we'd settled at a corner table. "The wedding invite thing was ridiculous. I got so caught up in creating this perfect image that I lost sight of what actually matters." "Which is?" I prompted gently. "Family. Real relationships. Not just appearances." She traced the rim of her mug with one finger. "Trevor wasn't the only one at fault. I was becoming someone I don't even recognize. Someone who would uninvite her brother over a tie color." Her self-awareness was unexpected and touching. "We all got caught up in different ways," I acknowledged. "I could have been more understanding about the pressure you were under." "But you were right to stand your ground," she insisted. "If more people had been honest with me instead of just going along with everything, maybe I would have seen the problems sooner." Our conversation ventured into territory we'd never explored before: our childhood dynamics, our parents' patterns, and how we'd each adapted in different ways. Amber acknowledged her tendency toward drama and attention-seeking. I admitted my sometimes self-righteous stance as the responsible one. "Do you think you'll ever talk to Trevor again?" I asked eventually. She sighed. "I don't know. Part of me still hates him for how he handled everything. But another part wonders if he actually did me a favor in the long run." A small, sad smile. "I read his letter, by the way. Not sure how I feel about it yet, but I read it." That conversation marked the beginning of a new chapter in our sibling relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than established roles. Amber began consulting me about career decisions as she refocused on professional growth, while I found myself sharing more of my personal uncertainties instead of always presenting as the one who had everything figured out. My parents' adjustment took longer but showed promising signs. During a family dinner 2 months after the wedding debacle, my father actually backed me up when I declined to take on planning their anniversary celebration due to work commitments. "Mason has his own life and priorities," he said, surprising everyone at the table. "We can't expect him to drop everything whenever we need something." The most meaningful change came when I brought Sophia to Chicago for Thanksgiving. Instead of being seated at the extended family table as had happened at previous gatherings, my mother made a point of placing her beside me at the main family table, engaging her in genuine conversation about her architectural projects. When Amber arrived, she greeted Sophia with a warm hug and a whispered apology for past slights. 6 months after the cancelled wedding, Amber invited Sophia and me to join her for a weekend at a lakeside cabin our family had often visited during our childhood. The intimate setting provided an opportunity for deeper reconciliation and planning for the future. Walking along the lakeshore with Amber on our final evening, watching the sunset paint the water in gold and crimson, I marveled at how differently things had turned out than anyone could have predicted. "You know what's weird?" Amber said, skipping a stone across the calm surface. "If the wedding had happened as planned, everything would still be the same. I'd still be trying to fit into Trevor's world, you'd still be the family fixer, Mom and Dad would still be enabling all of it. Sometimes it takes a crisis to break patterns," I replied, thinking of Diane's wisdom from the Hawaiian beach. "I'm actually happy now," she confessed. "Not all the time, of course. I still have moments of humiliation when I think about the wedding, But mostly, I feel free. Like I can figure out who I really am instead of who everyone expects me to be. I nodded, understanding completely. That's how I felt in Hawaii. Like I was finally acting from a place of self-respect instead of just fulfilling my assigned role. Do you think we'll slip back into old patterns? She asked, voicing my own occasional concern. Probably sometimes, I admitted. But now we recognize them, which means we can choose differently. As we headed back toward the cabin where Sophia was preparing dinner, Amber linked her arm through mine, a gesture of casual affection we hadn't shared since childhood. Thank you for not coming to my wedding, she said with a small laugh. As weird as that sounds to say. Anytime, I replied, returning her smile. Though maybe next time just don't invite me in the first place instead of uninviting me. Save us all some drama. Her playful shove nearly sent me into the lake, and our laughter echoed across the water, the sound of a relationship transformed through crisis into something more authentic and resilient than before. Today marks exactly 1 year since what my family now occasionally refers to as the wedding that wasn't. We're gathered at my parents' home for a casual Sunday dinner, Sophia and me, Amber, and my parents. There's a relaxed atmosphere that would have been unimaginable 18 months ago, when family gatherings were performances of perfection rather than authentic connections. Amber has just finished telling us about her promotion at work. She's now managing her own PR team, focusing on local businesses and nonprofits rather than the high society clients Trevor's connections had steered her toward. The genuine pride in her voice when she describes a recent successful campaign for a community garden initiative reflects how much she's grown into herself. I never would have pursued this direction before, she admits, accepting the glass of wine our father passes her. I was so focused on status and appearances that I couldn't see how unfulfilled I actually was. My mother, who once would have subtly questioned Amber's choice to work with smaller clients, now raises her glass in a toast. To doing work that matters to you, not just to others. The shift in our family dynamic didn't happen overnight. There were setbacks along the way, moments when Amber slipped back into dramatic reactions, times when our parents reverted to old enabling patterns, occasions when I found myself reluctantly donning the fixer hat again. But with each regression, our recovery came quicker, our self-awareness sharper. Therapy has been a crucial component for all of us. Amber found a counselor specializing in relationship trauma and identity development. My parents, after initial resistance, began seeing a family therapist to examine their parenting patterns. Even Sophia and I attended some couple sessions, not because we were having problems, but to ensure we were building our relationship on healthy communication rather than falling into the dynamics I'd grown up with. Perhaps the most unexpected development came 4 months ago, when Amber ran into Trevor at a charity event. Rather than the dramatic confrontation my family might once have expected, or even encouraged, they had a civil conversation that led to coffee the following week. Not a reconciliation or even a friendship, but a mature closing of their chapter together. He's dating someone new, Amber told me afterward, with surprising equanimity. A doctor he met through his volunteer work. She seems nothing like me, or at least, nothing like who I was trying to be back then. Does that bother you? I'd asked carefully. Honestly? No. It confirms what I already knew, we were completely wrong for each other. We were both playing roles instead of being ourselves. As for Sophia and me, we've recently moved into a new apartment with a spare bedroom that doubles as my home office and her design studio. There's a small velvet box hidden in my desk drawer, waiting for the right moment during our upcoming trip to Hawaii, a return to the place where I learned the importance of boundaries and self-respect, now transformed into a celebration of healthy love and partnership. My phone buzzes with a text from Ryan, asking about our fantasy football league. Beside me on the couch, Sophia is deep in conversation with my mother about renovation plans for the kitchen. Across the room, Amber and my father are debating the merits of different hiking trails for our planned family weekend next month. The scene is ordinary, comfortable, and genuine, everything our family interactions rarely were before the wedding crisis. What I've come to understand over this year of transformation is that sometimes what looks like selfish behavior, booking a vacation instead of attending a wedding, maintaining boundaries instead of rushing to the rescue, can actually be the most loving choice in the long run. By refusing to play my assigned role in our family drama, I created space for everyone to reconsider the parts they were playing. True support isn't about absorbing others' emotions or fixing their problems regardless of personal cost. It's about being present in healthy ways, offering help without sacrificing self-respect, and sometimes allowing natural consequences to unfold rather than rushing to prevent them. The irony isn't lost on me that by maintaining physical distance during my family's moment of crisis, I ultimately helped create the conditions for closer emotional connection than we'd ever had before. That by setting boundaries around what kind of support I would provide and how, I actually became more effectively supportive than I'd ever been in my people-pleasing days. As we finished dinner and moved to the living room for coffee and dessert, I catch Amber's eye across the room. She gives me a small, knowing smile, acknowledgement of how far we've both come since that disastrous wedding day and the Hawaii trip that changed everything. "Hey everyone," I say, setting down my coffee cup. "Before we wrap up tonight, I just wanted to say something. A year ago, none of us could have imagined being here like this, actually enjoying each other's company without all the tension and expectations. I'm really grateful for how we've all grown." My mother reaches over to squeeze my hand. "Sometimes the hardest lessons come from the most painful experiences." "Speaking of lessons," Amber adds, "I've been thinking about what I've learned through all this. Maybe we could all share one insight from the past year?" This thoughtful suggestion, so different from the attention-seeking behavior that once characterized my sister, leads us into one of the most authentic conversations we've ever had as a family. We talk about vulnerability, authenticity, the courage to disappoint others when necessary, and the freedom that comes with dropping pretenses. As the evening winds down and Sophia and I prepare to leave, I realize that the wedding disaster that once seemed like the worst possible outcome had actually been necessary catalysts for change. Sometimes relationships need to break before they can be rebuilt into something stronger and more genuine. What's your experience with family dynamics? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones, or found yourself playing a role that didn't feel authentic? Leave a comment below with your thoughts or stories. I've learned that sharing these experiences helps all of us feel less alone in our struggles. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more reflections on family, relationships, and personal growth. And if you know someone who might benefit from this message about healthy boundaries, share this video with them too. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others is to honor yourself first.